All right, so starting with 20. So that one was on dividing polynomials. You'll have another one like it on your retake, except it'll be open response, so not multiple choice. So there's two things that you could do. You could break this up into smaller fractions. I know that can be helpful. So it could be just making sure that you do each term on top divided by the term on the bottom. And make sure that you keep each sign that's in front of each term. If you break it up into smaller fractions, it will look something like this. All right, the other way could be, I kind of called it the highlighter method. You can take like a highlighter, maybe just circle with your pencil every time you're dividing the top term by the term on the bottom. So in that case, you might have like circles drawn on the paper like this. And again, just make sure you keep the sign in front of each term. For this one, I'll show you with breaking it up into smaller fractions, because I think it's a little easier to follow when we do it that way. So just take it one set at a time. So what's 6 divided by 6? 1, it cancels out, right? So anytime you have the same thing on top and bottom, it cancels out. But then I have x cubed divided by x. What rule do I use for that? The quotient rule. So I would write that down since, tomorrow you don't get to use your notes, just whatever you write down on your colored paper. So that's the rule that says if I have x to the a over x to the b, that equals what? What do I do with the exponents? You subtract. So then I have x cubed over x to the first. I get x to the second power, 3 minus 2. And then move on to the next term. So next term, what's negative 18 divided by 6? Positive or negative? Negative, because you have to keep the sign that's in front of each term. It's a negative 18 divided by 6, so it's a negative 3. And then what's x squared divided by x? Just x. Use your quotient rule. X to the 2 over x to the 1, 2 minus 1 is 1. All right, last term. We do negative 12 divided by 6. What do we get? Negative 2 and x divided by x. And I have the same thing on top and bottom. Wow. It cancels out just like the 6's did over here. Since these are both x to the first, they cancel out to 1, which I'm not going to write negative 2 times 1, am I? So what's negative 2 times 1? Still negative 2. So if it cancels out like this, x to the 1 over x to the 1 gives me x to the 0, which is still 1. Then it goes away. So then this is my answer. That's why A was the correct answer for that one. And again, on your test, it'll be open response. So questions on this one? Any others from the test? Yes, Taylor. Number 12. All right. So this one, I know it's confusing for you guys. A lot of people got it wrong, but I mean, it is something we went over and did quite a few examples on. So let's make sure we get it right on the retake. So these are the functions within a function, the f of g's or g of f's. So this one's written f of g of negative 4. So is that fog or is it goth? Fog, because it's written f of g. I think the pictures are helpful, so I'm going to draw the picture every time. So is it f being plugged into g or g plugged into f? Always the innermost plugged into the outermost. This time it gives me a number though. It's not just g of x. It gives me g of -4. So what I'm going to do, and I'll draw it under my picture, is I'm plugging in -4 for the x on the g function. So I get g of -4 equals -2 times -4 minus 5. All right, the left side is just notation. The right side, we're going to simplify. So on the right side, what's -2 times -4? +8, and then minus 5, +3. So g of -4 equals 3. So we're going to take that 3, because that's what g of -4 equals, and that is going to be plugged into the f of x function for the x, because it says f of g of -4. So function we get from the problem, the number we get from plugging in -4. So x is now going to be 3. Questions about this so far? Is it making sense? All right, so then on the left side, it's just notation. On the right side, you do order of operations. So am I going to multiply first or do my exponents first? So Penta says we do exponents first. So what is 3 squared? 9. And then we get 3 times 9. So now we multiply, which equals what? $27. That's why the correct answer that you should have typed in is 27. Because it's the g of -4, which we solved, equal 3. So 3 is what we plug into the f function. So questions about that? Right. I think the picture is helpful, because it shows we're taking the g function, plugging it into the f function. All right, so questions on this one. It's always the innermost being plugged into the outermost. So like this one's inside brackets. This will be plugged into the f. All right, any others from the test? Yes. 17. All right, so this one, good one to go over because it's actually 2 rules that we're reviewing. So choose a correct simplification. When it's set up like this, what rule do we use? What's that rule called? The first rule that we're using is going to be the quotient rule. All right, so that one says if I have it set up in fraction form, variables of the same base, what do I do with the exponents? Subtract them. So that's what I'm going to do here. So then I get, so if it's x to the 12 over x to the 2, subtract them, what's 12 minus 2? So that's how I get x to the 10. And then I have y cubed over y to the 15. It's always the top minus the bottom. What's 3 minus 15? -12. 3 minus 15 is -12. Now, that's not any of my answer options. And FYI, on your test, it will be open response. So what rule do we have to apply from here? The negative exponent rule. All right, so I would write that one down. Although I can tell you, since I made your retake, I can tell you that you'll be safe if you remember the quotient rule, product rule, and power rule. Those 3. negative exponent rule for fun. So x to the negative a equals 1 over x to the positive a. So if you have a negative exponent in your answer, save it for last. And we're going to put it in a fraction form, even if it's not already. Just put it in a fraction form. And you only move the stuff that has a negative exponent. So do I need to move the x? No, just the y to the negative 12 moves over the fraction bar and it gets rewritten as positive. So when I clean this up, my final answer is x to the 10 over y to the 12. So questions on 17. All right, any others? Matthew? 13. All right, so this one's a good one. That's why we gave you this on the 6-5 exit ticket, or not necessarily this one, but we gave you a word problem because this is from the 6-5 lesson. So it wasn't just random. It was from those functions within a function. So we have a vat of milk has spilled on a tile floor. The milk flow can be expressed with this function, R of t, where t represents time in minutes and r represents how far the milk is spreading. The spilled milk is creating a circular pattern on the tile. The area of the pattern can be described as this function, a of r. And then it wants to know which function shows the area of the spilled milk as a function of time. So lots of words there, but just look at the two functions. What do they have in common? What letter? They both have r's. And if you notice, one is like the r function, and then the other is r being placed inside another function. So that's your function within a function. So since r is like the innermost over here, that means r of t is going to be placed in brackets and be plugged into this a function. Am I making sense so far? It's a function being plugged into a function. So that narrows it down to a and b. Now we actually just have to do like the plugging in. So anywhere that there is an r, like there is here, is going to be replaced with what r equals, which is 4t. And then we'll have to simplify. So it becomes pi in parentheses 4t squared. Any questions so far? Now, the right answer for this one is B, because what they did was they used the power rule and they distributed that exponent of 2 to everything inside the parentheses like they're supposed to. So what it becomes, so bring everything down. What is 4 squared? 16. So it becomes pi 16, and then when we distribute the exponent of 2 to the t, it becomes t squared. Now, normally any numbers are written as coefficients. So then they just moved it in front of the pi t squared. All right, so lots of stuff going on in that one. I might review it and see, like, if more than 70% of the class missed it, I'll make it extra credit. But that was the functions within a function. Yes? Is there still a line for the restroom? All right, go ahead. Any others? Taylor? Number 2. All right, so this one's a good one to go over because a good chunk of your points on the retake will be classifying by degree and term. So classify the expression by degree. What does degree mean? So it means we're talking about exponents. And what we're really talking about is the sum of exponents on a term. So you'll look at each term individually and you'll name the degree for each term first. But like the overall degree, so the overall degree is whichever number is higher. So whichever number is highest. So it wants the overall degree, but we need to look at each one individually first. So then look at your expression. What would be the degree of the first term? 2, because we only have an x, so that exponent has an exponent of 2. What about on the second term? 1, because x to the 1, so there's only 1. What about on the 2? 0, because it doesn't even have a variable with exponent. All right, so then out of those 3 numbers, which is the highest? 2. Now, on your free response, I'd be perfectly fine with you saying second degree. Perfectly fine with it, honestly. But we learned some fancy names. Do you guys remember the fancy names for the second degrees? Quadratic is correct. Since you got to use your notes yesterday, I'm hoping you used it on this one. So remember, first degree was linear. Second degree is quadratic. Third degree is cubic. And fourth degree is quartic. I know some people thought in my last class that quadratic was 4 or more, but it's not. All right, so quadratic. These other ones were thrown in here to trick you. The binomial and trinomial. That's not classifying by degree. It's classifying by what? By number of terms. So if you said that this is a trinomial, I mean, it is a trinomial, but it said classify it by degree. So that's why. Questions on number 2? Questions on any others? Don't be shy. Not 13 more minutes. Going once. Twice. All right, so then I'm gonna come around and make sure you have some corrections done. So keep working till the end of possible.